Join former FBI senior forensic examiners Becky, Passmore, and Stacey Eldridge as they dig into the world of digital forensics, one bite at a time. Now leading their own consulting firms and educating the next generation of cyber sleuths. These badass babes of digital forensics bring sharp insight, real-world case experience, and a dose of humor to the bits and bytes that build today's investigations. From deep dives into business email compromise and ransomware attacks, Becky's specialty, to cracking the complexities of iPhone forensics, Stacey's obsession. This podcast delivers insider knowledge for professionals, students, and true crime techies alike. If you've ever wondered what really happens when the digital trail is all that's left, tune in and start parsing the truth.
Welcome back to Parsing the Truth, one bite at a time. We are the true crime-ish podcast where we talk about all things digital forensics, from cases that people have worked to courtroom testimony to things that you got to know. This is the podcast for you if you're a digital forensic examiner or just into the digital evidence. And I am your host, Stacey Eldridge. And with me, as always, is my co-host, Becky Passmore. And Becky, what are we going to do in this episode?
Yep. So tonight we are joined by someone who needs very little introduction in the digital forensics community. Brett Shavers has spent decades teaching investigators how to think critically about digital evidence rather than simply pushing buttons on forensic tools. He's the author of several influential books, including Defer, Investigative Mindset. So welcome, Brett. We're very excited to have you here on Parsing the Truth. So for our listeners that may not know you, how did you get started in digital forensics? And do a little introduction.
Hi, I'm Brett Shavers. I'm glad to be here. Thanks for having me. Getting started in digital forensics was I did a lot of undercover work. I bought a lot of things and stole a lot of things. I bought a lot of drugs, guns, and people.
A little different than digital forensics.
A little different. And, computers toward the end of my, that stint of undercover, there's some digital evidence that other people were doing. And I was watching it saying, well, it's kind of boring. And one day, my cold case agent, a federal agent, went to the East Coast for a few months. He went to all the FLETC courses. So I was by myself handling these cases. And he came back and I said, where did you go? And he goes, all I can tell you is I'm marketable. And then he told me about forensics, and I said, I think that's the way I want to go. By that time I had, a gun stuck in my gut, been patted down. I was going out of country for undercover work. A lot of crazy stuff that I don't know why I was doing some of it. And I thought, well, a computer would never try to kill me. I'm probably wrong with that, but I figured that would be the next stage. So I went to the FLETC and did all those things and started doing those types of cases. And then I saw the impact of what a forensic exam, even on one storage device, can do compared to an international case of money laundering, for example. It's just the impact is so much greater that one person can do. So I thought this is actually a pretty good thing. And start doing the cases that are very serious. And I thought, yeah, this is, I think, a good stage of my career to move into. So I moved into it from law enforcement and then went to the private sector. So that's how I got in. Tired of getting guns stuck at me, pointing at me, that kind of stuff.
I hear you. That makes for a bad day. But Brett, we are so excited to have you. And one of the reasons that this book resonates with us and so many other examiners is that because it addresses so many things that digital forensic examiners eventually have to realize. Tools don't solve cases. People do. And I actually received this book over a year ago when I went to the advanced mobile forensics class at IASIS. And I can say it's good. And I've actually read it. And then I have applied parts of it to my students and their learning objectives and what they're learning at the university level.
I think it's a good topic, personally. It actually started out as a section in a book that I'm working on right now, the volume 3 of that series. And that section grew into a chapter, and I'm just trying to condense it. And I just figured, it actually is probably more important than just a chapter. And that's where that book came from. I'm still working on that other book, but that mindset, I think, was kind of a big issue. And I wrote about it in my first book in 2013, kind of briefly, because it wasn't fleshed out as much as it is now. But it's been in my mind for a long time, and I think it's an important topic we kind of don't teach, not enough anyway.
That's true. Yeah. So was the inspiration to writing the book from some type of a case or experience that made you realize we needed this kind of perspective?
I was given a workshop at in Seattle DFWRS or one of the conferences, and it was all academia in the room. And it was
Hmm.
me and actually a bunch of Seattle FBI guys and everybody else in there. And I'm talking about forensic cases and that sort of thing. And one of the just students, but a PhD up front, she asked me a question. She said, "It sounds like you're saying everyone needs to be law enforcement experienced before they do this work." And I said, "No, I mean, you don't have to." I said, "But you have to have, an investigative type of mindset." And so she said, how do you teach it if you've never done it before?" And I said, "I don't know." Because, if you're doing it for a long time, it's kind of natural, a lot of experience, a lot of
Right.
trial and error, and then you kind of know it. But articulating it is very difficult. I told the class, I don't know how to articulate it really. I mean, I know how to do it. I'm trying to show how to do it, but that's really not the same thing. So since that time, I wrote a few books and hemming and hawing over it to try to articulate it to this point. And during that, I was working on kind of a serious case, and one of the federal agents was doing a great job in his case, and he's doing a great job, and I was just following behind him. I mean, I was just his shirt tail, I was just holding on and like a surfboard, and it was so complicated, the things that we were doing. I mean, international everything. And I asked him, I said, "How are you able?" I said, "How many times have you worked this kind of case before?" He said, "This is the first time." I said, "Then how did you do it?" And he could not articulate the way
Hmm.
that he was thinking of how to solve these problems. So I learned a lot from that case. And I think I learned how to articulate it better than, I mean, he's much better than I was. There's a movie made up about one of his cases he did. He's that kind of a great investigator. But I think articulating it is so difficult. So, and this book, when I was writing it, the first versions were so stilted, like a textbook of, you can imagine. So I thought, well, no one's going to read that one. It's got to be digestible. Hopefully in a weekend, you can read it and walk away and say, I can put it to use on Monday. And that's the whole purpose of that book, and trying to get more people. Because as you know, now there's fewer law enforcement that are filling the field. It used to
Yep.
be all law enforcement, really. And now we're having
Yep.
students who've never worked a case, civil or criminal
Right.
or internal. So teaching them technology is easy. Here's the
Right.
binary. And this is the way it's easy. Push this button. There you go. But the casework is what we had not taught. And I think that's our fault coming from law enforcement, because we naturally assume, well, this is easy stuff. Investigation's easy, but we've been doing it for a long time. But telling somebody else to go investigate a case and they don't know, I think we're doing a disservice. So this is kind of my small part of trying to help get the mindset into doing this work.
Yeah, for sure. That's fantastic.
So, if you had to summarize the investigative mindset, how would you describe it today?
It's beyond being curious. It's asking the right questions, right? And examining what's in front of you and being able to change your mind, right? Mitigating your biases, try to identify your biases, mitigate them. And new evidence comes, you follow the evidence. So wherever the evidence comes, you go that direction. And I think that's an investigative mindset. It's like an umbrella it's a big umbrella. And under the umbrella, you have all those little things like critical thinking,
Yeah.
bias control, legal, all those different things under it. So investigative mindset is the whole big umbrella. So just having that, you can cover a lot of aspects of doing any investigation or casework.
That's great. I like beyond being curious, and now starting to formulate a mindset to look at an investigation. So we have a lot of new examiners. They believe digital forensics is primarily about learning that software tool. And so at what point does someone transition from being that technician to become an investigator? At what point do they have to be? Because like Stacey was saying, we both teach it, and
Yeah.
I've kind of gone to your mindset of let's teach it where it doesn't matter what tool they pick up, they can learn it. So at what point do you see that transition occur?
I think internally, people can see it happen when you stop asking, what did the tool show me, and you start
Hmm.
asking, well, what does this mean? What is this story? And I think when people can transition into those questions, naturally, they're not looking at the tool output as output. They're looking at, what does the story tell me? How can I interpret this? I think that's a transition away from the tools. I'm a tool junkie. I love tools. I like pushing buttons. I mean, it's neat stuff, but
Hmm.
I'm always constantly saying, well, that's just a tool. I've said it for many years. Whatever tool comes out, I will use that tool. If we have the mindset of we have a case, whether it be civil or criminal or internal, whatever it may be, we have a case. The objective is the resolution of that case. And the way that we've been taught and get into the computer is my objective is running these tools and running these commands. This is my objective, is doing this. And we have to get away from that and think, well, that's just a means to the end. The end is the case objective. This is just how to get there. Tomorrow we have a different software, a different tool. So I think getting the mindset of this is just a hammer to build a house. It's not the house. So little things that we can teach the students of, hey, today is magnet, tomorrow is X-rays, the next day is who knows what. So whatever works, you use it.
Right, for sure. I mean, you've kind of started to answer this question, but tell us a little more. Do you think we can set out to teach what this investigative mindset is, or is it mostly something that has to be developed through experience?
It's a combination, I think. When I became a detective, for the first year, I thought I'm going to quit because I am the most incompetent person in that desk. And then the second year, I'm struggling. And almost exactly the second year, I sat back in my chair and I said, I got it. I think I got it. So it took me 2 years to finally get it. Some people get it in a month, but it took me 2 years. I think
Well, it's the same thing as becoming a new digital forensic examiner. At least for me, it was just like, I'm certified now. Do I even know what I'm doing yet? And you feel real uncomfortable for a couple of years. You're like, am I doing this right? Do I know what I'm doing?
Right. So part of the answer is experience, right? Making decisions, making mistakes. Hopefully you don't ruin your career or ruin a case too bad. And I think there's a shortcut to that. One of the shortcuts is getting hints from people. So like this book would be a hint. Here's a book of hints, right, to help you. It's kind of like you're going to a friend's house for the first time and your friend says, hey, take a left at the 7-Eleven. You'll find my house right there. That's a hint how to get to the house. If you don't have that hint, you're going to drive every street for an hour and maybe happen upon the house. So this book or being told, hey, when you're doing a case, if this comes up, think about these questions. That's a hint to get that mindset a lot faster. Otherwise, it's going to be 2 years or 3 years.
Yeah. So one of the themes that stood out was avoiding that confirmation bias. So why is that such a dangerous trap in deeper investigations?
Well, I have a confirmation bias on coffee. I'll see someone post, 3 or 4 cups or 5 cups is too much. So I'll go online and I'll type in how much coffee is too much. And I'll bypass everything that says 5 cups is too much. And I'll find the things that say 5 cups is good. So my confirmation bias is I want to make sure coffee is okay for me, right?
Right.
Working a case is the same sort of thing as when you have some bias, confirmation, or authority, whatever it may be. If you don't recognize it, well, I guess there's 2 part. If you recognize it, you can kind of mitigate it. But some people recognize it and they don't mitigate it on purpose. I've seen investigators get stuck on one path. This person did it, for example, and we're going that way, hell or high water. And it's like the evidence is pointing different directions and they're just stuck on that person or that path, whatever it may be. And that's a confirmation bias of, I'm going to find the facts to fit my theory rather than let's find the evidence, to create our theory first and then try to test it. So that bias is some recognize it and can mitigate it. Some recognize it and they don't. They just, it's like a sunk cost. So, hey, I've already gambled 6 months in this case. I'm not going to stop now. We're going to keep on going the way we're going as long as we can control it ourselves.
Stacey and I just had this conversation this week about a direction a case can go based on the direction the narrative is being spun, basically.
Yeah. Well, and sometimes you're even working a case and you just see something and you jump to the conclusion. And then I can at least catch myself doing it. I jumped to this conclusion and I'm like, whoa, I just jumped. I need to take a step back and see, are there facts that actually support this conclusion I just jumped to? Or did I just come to something out of left field? So I always take a step back and double check what led me to jump and then see if there's more facts that actually support it. Or can I find some facts that dispute whatever wild thing I just came up with?
Exactly.
If there's a rabbit hole, I can find it. So.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. It's a special skill many of us have. So have you seen situations or have you been involved in cases where the examiner has become too attached to a theory very early in the case?
Yeah, it depends on the organization, I guess. I worked as a sole examiner. There was no forensics in my agency. So I wrote up the policy and I got all the tools, from the feds and all that stuff. So I was doing it myself, which meant I was running the cases myself. And when I was doing undercover work.
So were you the investigator and the examiner in the office?
I was that and doing other cases too. So
Okay.
And just whoever's done undercover work knows that if you're doing undercover work, you should not be running a case too. So I did that too. When I was doing smaller cases, I was actually running the case and be undercover, and then the bigger cases, I just be undercover. And there's a big difference in the quality of the case, of course, safety too. And forensics is the same way. If it's a 1 or 2 person shop, it's easy to get pulled into, that you pull yourself in some direction without someone pulling you to the side and saying, hey, there's a bigger picture. Why don't you take a look at these other things? So I have seen it a lot. I've experienced it to the point of having to pull myself back out. And I think I wrote a framework, and I kind of differentiate between practitioner and examiner. And I know that there are still agencies that one person's doing both or everything, right? And you almost physically have to put on a hat that says, I'm just doing the examination, take it off, put another one on. Okay, now I'm doing the investigation with CCTV and all those other things I'm doing. So you physically have to, or mentally strongly do that, even verbally say, right now I'm doing the examiner part and just forget everything else. And the next step, okay, now I'm doing the investigator part. I got to pull everything in together. So it's a challenge, but it's possible to do it. It works. You just have to physically and mentally do that.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
So that's kind of one of those practical strategies that investigators or examiners can use. But what are other practical strategies that investigators or examiners can use to challenge their own assumptions during an examination?
Well, I always ask myself a question before I sign my name to anything, before I commit to some task that's going to take me an hour or a week to do. Before I get to that point, I ask myself, what if I'm wrong? What if I'm wrong? And what's the consequences? I'm going to be a week off track, or the wrong person is going to be exonerated, or whatever it may be. Litigation is going to be screwed up. So I ask myself, what is wrong? What if I'm wrong? And just go over those consequences. And that kind of makes me really paranoid to go back and double check everything and try to prove myself wrong. And I'll take the devil's advocate approach of, I wrote this wrong or misinterpreted something, whatever it may be, and I try to bang myself up or bang my work up. And if I can't do that, and I think I'm right, I don't want to be right because I want to be right. I want to be right because I am right. I'm not trying to prove myself right. I'm trying to prove what is right. So it's a mental challenge every time, every step in some task that you run. It's going to take you hours out of whatever you're doing to get that one done, examine it, as low as level that you go, and then realize later that was a big mistake. Now I'm 8 hours behind where it should have been.
It happens.
All the time.
Kind of along the same lines, you mentioned, you have to ask yourself questions, but you also have to work on hypothesis. So how do you test if you're trying to prove a hypothesis versus simply looking for evidence that supports your hypothesis?
Well, again, you got to try to prove yourself wrong with alternative hypothesis. What else could have caused this, or who else could have caused this? If you have a device shared by 3 people and you name one, it's like, well, is it possible these other two, any one of the other two could have done it? Is it possible? Are these other things possible? So what's that Sherlock Holmes statement of eliminate everything that's impossible, and all you have is what's possible left. Get rid of what's not possible to narrow down what is possible. Because we're not the ones that are going to attribute a crime or an act to somebody. We're saying the device, this is what happened on a device. So if we're just doing the examination. So the attribution to a person, that's the investigator part
Right.
of all the other things. So as long as we do our job right, this is the device, this is user account, this is a session, all these things match up. Nothing else could have been alternative. So the trier of fact, here's your decision making based on that.
Well, and I have kind of a follow-up question to that. So you said, our job isn't attribution, it's the investigators. But one of the things we're working to do as digital forensic examiners, as I like to say, we're trying to put butts in chairs. But so where is that line of to your point, placing the suspect behind the keyboard, as you say it, versus attribution?
Yep. That's the hard part, right? I only know of 2 cases that the person was put behind the computer solely by digital evidence. I mean, without a doubt, solely by digital evidence. And I'm not talking about CCTV cameras and that sort of thing, but only what was on the device. And it was really quite incredible cases of, wow, that's the first time I've ever seen that. Oh, it's the second time I've ever seen that. But typically we don't have that, right? We have the smartphones in the pocket. It's their smartphone, it's theirs. Most likely they did it, right? Most likely. But to prove that part is difficult, right? So we don't investigate devices. We interrogate devices. We interrogate data. The case is what's investigated. So we are interrogating all the data. We're putting all the data together into a plausible story that's mostly probably going to be right. And it's up to the other things to come in to make it attribution to a person. And that's where you get, CCTV, witness statements, videos, whatever it may be, to put that on there. So it's a strong line. And that was that case where the detective said, somebody did it. This person did it. And later she retracted her statement. And, the report was she did it. Well, if that's the only thing you have is the person, the suspect says they did it, then you're kind of weak. I mean, you have to have something to back that up too. Well, he or she said he did it. And they were the only one in the office per all these other things, witnesses, key card access. Then you have two things. So if they retract, well, we have a backup. But just by having one, and one being just digital evidence, is quite, I think, almost risky to say this device belongs to this person who did the thing, without anything besides that.
Right. Yeah. Well, and in your opinion, are we supposed to be writing in our reports, so-and-so did it, or all data points lead to so-and-so doing that bad thing?
You would think you would never see that anymore, but I do peer reports, peer reviews, and I still see those things. I mean, the things that people write, you read it and you go, well, it probably sounded good at the time, but a year later, 6 months later, it doesn't sound that good. The software told me this, something like that, or
we hear that in court testimony still.
Or so and so sent the email and say, the account did. At least we know that, but we don't know the person did, unless there's something else, obviously. So those things still happen. People still write those things. They testify those things. I don't know what to say besides don't do that.
Exactly. So in your book, you emphasize asking better questions. And so what do you think are the most important questions investigators could or should continuously ask themselves throughout a case, excuse me?
Well, I think first is what's the legal authority, because usually that gives you a hint on what you're going to do. If it's a civil case,
read it and
emails.
Stuff.
Yeah, right.
Step one, read the legal authority.
Step one, make sure you have it.
Okay. I jumped ahead of myself. I'm sorry.
Yes.
That's important.
And then that kind of guides you to okay, this is my authority is the four corners of whatever the paper is. I can't look at medical. I can look at this, that, and the other. And the other one is what is the scope of what am I looking for? I've had cases where I think everyone's had a case of find me the evidence, and it's like, come on, I need a hint. Something. So having that final objective. So you know your legal authority, and you know the beginning and the end. I got the legal authority, and I know what my end goal is. And then from there, you make your questions. So how do I get there? I need to know who, the accounts on the computer, who had access to the computer, and the activity that leads to my objective. So those are the questions, or those things that help you develop the questions. And it's not what software do I use? I want to use this new software. It's nothing like that. It's but what I need from the registry. So if the registry, I got any tool I can pick, I'll go that direction. So the questions are dependent upon your step one and your step end of the case.
You mentioned it.
I think
go ahead, Becky.
I think that's just invaluable. What we always talk about, that legal authority, that scope, and stay within it, right? Don't fish around looking for something else. So
you've mentioned curiosity, and that's something personally I have leaned on heavily. But so how important is curiosity and digital investigation? And what is the difference between curiosity and having an investigative mindset? Or is there really no difference at all?
I think there's a difference. Curiosity is kind of a broad term, just being curious. So let's say, a hot stove. Hey, I'm curious what that feels like. That's curiosity. But an investigative mindset would be, it's a hot stove. It's red. Let me use a thermometer. Let me feel the heat over. It's more of you're asking questions before you're just like a fishing expedition is you're throwing your line out there. You don't know what you're going to catch. But if you go on a targeted fishing trip, I want to catch a marlin. I'm going to use this pole, use this bait, go to this area. So it's kind of a different thing. So it's good to be curious, but curiosity without direction can be random, risky, dangerous. Walking into the woods, I wonder what's in the middle of those woods, and you may never come out. Another way is, I wonder what's in the woods. I'm going to bring a map. I'm going to bring a compass. I'm going to tell people where I'm going. I got a GPS. So I think a little bit of difference in the precision of that.
Yeah, because going to your wood. Yeah, it's questions to help you get prepared for the situation. So going back to your woods situation, what am I going to find in the woods? Well, what do I need to get into the woods? What do I need to get out of the woods? Back out of them? What do I need to navigate within the woods? What if it gets cold? Do I need something to help me stay warm? Is that kind of where you're going? That's the next level of the investigative mindset.
It is. So for a student who's ultimate curious, their just curiosity is a way, I want to run into the woods. That's good. I think it's better to pull students back and say, okay, slow down, overachiever. Let's just pack up some gear here first. instead of having to push somebody to be curious, come on, you got to get some energy in here. So being curious is a good basic trait to have, because you can mold that and say curiosity is great. You can make it targeted with, some good questions.
Yeah, no, that's great. I like that. So walk us through how your thought process changes from receiving a request to forming a conclusion.
It's all based on evidence. It's and I found that, at least in a private sector, where I've gotten some cases and the attorney would say, this is the case. These are my clients, and my clients are innocent. And I go, okay, well, let me check. And, I found where they weren't innocent. I mean, all the evidence on the devices kind of
Yeah,
show that they're not.
Yeah, you have an example. Some of those case examples, you have one like that in this book.
Yeah. So those, for me, it's that bias of, well, my attorney swears up and down. They swear up and down. This guy's got 100 years of experience. He's the number one, whatever. And I feel like, am I doing this wrong? I'll go back, double check everything, try to prove myself wrong. And it's like, oh, this is it. And I think, even with him not telling me that, I'd still come up with the same answer. So for me, for my thought process is, evidence comes up, I follow that evidence. Otherwise, where do you go? I mean, then you're fishing around for something, and you're not going to find what you're looking for by fishing without being targeted and following evidence. And one clue leads to another. You may have to back up here and there, but eventually you just follow the evidence trail. That's the thought process. All depends on the evidence. If you can find it. If you don't know what you're doing, obviously you're not going to find anything.
So what distinguishes a good investigator from a great investigator?
I think a good investigator is great at finding evidence, and specifically for forensics, everything, right? Whatever evidence is on that device, they can find it and they can output it. I think that's a good investigator. I think a great investigator can do that and tell it as a story that anybody can understand, that when they listen to it, it's almost like they're watching a movie in their mind as if they were there. So the great investigator can say, this is the examination that I did, and here's the timeline of what happened, and everyone's listening. In their head, they're picturing like they're in the movie themselves, and they experienced it. So it's one thing to tell a story, and people go, okay, yeah, I got it. I understand the story. It's another thing to tell a story that they felt like they experienced it themselves. And if you can do that with an investigation, you've really become a great storyteller, a great investigator.
And Becky, you've said that before in one of your cases, like the AUSA was like, this case inside out. Now you've got to tell a compelling story to the jury about what happened. And you have the same thing in your book, because Becky and I were talking about it, but you said, right in here, you said to tell a story to the reader using clear, concise, and accurate information, but you have to do it in such a way that it tells a story. So it's going to be to the reader, the report, the judge, the jury, the lawyers. And now I'm kind of going rogue here. Becky loves it when I do that. But we were talking about like our students as we're teaching at the university level. The biggest feedback I get in my class or in my classes is all we did was write. We had to like write a paper every week about something. And then we also had to like write a report about the lab. It's just too much writing. I just want to do labs. So any comments to share on that about the importance of writing and communication, that we can help reinforce the students, that might be listening, that they know why their teachers are having them do this or why their coaches are having them write big, long reports once they're employed.
Yeah. If you don't want to write and you don't want to communicate the story, that means you don't want to have this job. It's it's part of the job. Police work is the same way. I mean, you can run around, write speeding tickets and make arrests, but if you don't want to go to trial one day, then you shouldn't be doing those things, because you have to. That's bringing the football across the goal line, right? If you don't do that, it's a halfway job. It's like putting all your veggies on a pizza, and instead of cooking it, you bring it to the table to everybody eat it. It's like, what? You got to cook the thing too. So
well,
you have to
I wouldn't even eat it with all the veggies on there.
But there you go. Okay. Or just pepperoni. So I think, and if someone, writing's, I think, a big deal.
It's hard. I mean,
it's hard.
I've been doing this for a long time. It's still hard.
It forces you to critically think. And
yes.
When you write, if you go back at it, you go, oh, that sounded bad. You make it better, and you'll understand it better, right? And if you can write well, you can speak well, right? So when I see someone who can speak well, I go, they can probably write pretty good too, because there's no way you can really speak well without being able to put your thoughts on paper. And you can't really put your thoughts on paper if you're not critically thinking. If you're not a critical thinker, your writing is going to be kind of junk. It's like this person's not thinking; they're just putting some words on a paper. So it's kind of like a ladder. You critically think, right? You figure things out. You can put it on paper well, and then you can speak on it. You are pretty well with the communication from the start to finish. So it's probably the most important part. I think it's one of the most important parts. You can find the damning evidence, but if you can't convey it in the case, it is useless work that you did. It was you might as well taken vacation and not did it at all.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
kind of
If,
wasted.
if you can't explain it, did you even do it? Right?
Right.
Well, and I find when I'm writing up my reports, I'm not just going back to my case notes. I am going back into it because I'll be writing something and I'm trying to explain something. And I'm like, ooh, I think I need like one more piece of information to better tell this story. I don't have it all yet. And I think, you think you're done. And especially like I've noticed over years, like the way I wrote in the FBI was much more of just like, I'm just put all these facts down here on the paper. I don't think there was a lot of explaining. But now I know this is, I do either civil or criminal defense. And so it's going to the lawyers first, and they need it to be tell that story in a good enough fashions that they can have like a judge grant a motion for something. And so if nobody understands it, if I can't tell the whole picture, it's not going to do anybody any good. So I really am more focused on explaining, stating I found this and then explaining everything in terms of significance and what it means. And then to do that, I find I need many more artifacts to do that rather than just like one thing.
Yeah, I know early in police work, my career, the general unwritten rule was write a report, send it off to detectives, and forget about it. And really no thought of what the detectives have to go through for things that we didn't do, and then for the prosecutor to go through for what wasn't done because of we didn't do a good enough job, right? So, and I never really understood. Maybe I should do better work. So, because the prosecutor's the one's got to bring this trial, I should do a more thorough. So, I was doing a more thorough work, obviously thinking about that, and it really didn't hit me as strong as I had a pro se lawsuit a few years ago, and where I sued an agency just over public records, and I thought it's just public records, they're withholding some records, and it went to a lawsuit, and I thought, I asked my attorney, do I need an attorney? He goes, it's just public records. So I did the complaint, and it turned out to be much more than public records. So about 2 years of that whole process in that public records case. So I did the complaint, the motions, the replies, responses, interrogatories, deposed witnesses. I was deposed. I cross-examined. I did the trial brief. I did all those things, the chief, everything. And I won the case, which I'm happy that I won, but it was a lot of stress. But what I learned was having to do all those things to see the perspective of, okay, this is what the lawyer sees and this is what I need. And then go to trial and get killed one day by the other side. And I'm learning, wow, okay, yeah, I was not prepared because I had no idea of what really was needed. And to see the things that are needed in a case really from that perspective was an amazing experience that I don't recommend to go through for fun, but at least an experience to looking at how a case works all the way through trial, I think is very important. Because then you can see, yeah, I really need to write in a manner that is going to be useful. Because otherwise, I've seen lawyers take some reports and just toss it and say, I'm not going to use this. Not mine, but it's one of those, because it was so convoluted of everything, I'm just not going to use this. And I'm thinking, wow, that was written pretty bad, I'm sure. So I don't want to have that. I want to be able to write well so they can actually use my work, because otherwise, what did I do it for?
This episode is powered by Ace Forensics. Ace Forensics has been building computer systems since 1983, and they deliver high-performance workstations, laptops, and servers built for today's digital forensic tools. They offer unmatched value and the industry's only 5-year warranty. If you're tired of waiting on slow machines, head over to aceforensics.com for a competitive quote today and have Ace Forensics build the systems you deserve. And now, back to our episode.
Yeah, for sure. Wow. We talked about legal authority at the beginning. We talked about having that scope. So how much should an examiner understand the legal theory of a case before beginning their analysis?
That's a good question, isn't it? Yeah, I'm a huge advocate on the legal knowledge in this specifically digital forensics field. And I'm an advocate of not as strong in the IR side. The IR side is a little bit different. They should have some legal knowledge, obviously, because some things can be turned into legal. But on this side, the digital forensic side, where you're doing litigation, whether it be criminal or civil, I think you have to have a strong legal knowledge, some kind of background, and knowing how legal theory, what it is, what is evidence, what is not evidence, what's admissible, not admissible, the scope and all this authority. There are so many people who don't have that at all. And it makes me cringe thinking, how can you touch any personal device and not know what the whole legal concept, the legal authority, the ramifications if you do it wrong, if you exceed your authority, all those things. It's pretty serious. And it's unfortunate is we're so strong on the technical part of this field where take a 3-day class and now you can hang a shingle out and do a case. And it's like, well, there's a little bit more than that. Technical is easy. We can all learn technical, really. Some people may learn it in a day. Some people may learn it in a year, but we can all learn technical. But we kind of avoid the legal because it's boring. It's like, why do we have to write a paper? Why do we have to talk in front of the class to give our story? Why do we got to learn, what the search and seizure is? Why do we got to learn these things? It's not, I want to push the button and play the game on the computer. That's basically what it comes down to. And I think it's one of those tools. AI is going to change a lot of that too. With those who like I like tools, running something and it pulls up some automated, all this evidence. It's like, oh my gosh, this is neat, and I go through it and that's neat, but still the objective is the case. It's not what the tool is showing me. But we're really strong on these tools and the tool training and short. I mean, you can learn any tool you want. Next year it's going to change. 5 years, it's not going to exist. But the legal concept and authority is going to be, it's constant.
So you've alluded to it already on this podcast episode, and you talk about it in the book where you've had clients in situations where the story they told you about what happened, you did not have the evidence to support their claims about what happened. So how do you handle that with the evidence doesn't meet the client's expectations of what they say happened or what you're going to find?
I think that's the good part of this job, even private sector or public sector, is the evidence is the evidence. I mean, that's it. It's the evidence is the evidence. And to go beyond that is the problem. When you have a client that's pushing, well, and I've had clients almost exactly push in the wrong way of, I want you to say this, basically, right? And say, yeah, well, that would be incorrect.
I hate that. I hate that. They're like, will you say this? Or what's even worse, do you have like lawyers writing reports for you to sign? Oh,
yeah.
It's horrible.
Yeah. But I said the best part is, this is the facts. This is the evidence. And I can testify to this, and not outside of that. And we're fortunate to do that. If you're the investigator, as the case investigator, then those little four corners are a little bit broader because then you can bring in a lot of other things that aren't really, solid binary. You have a lot of inferences and conflicting information from the outside.
That's right. That's right. So you brought up AI. So with AI increasingly entering the deeper space, which I am working on my PhD, and it does have something to do with AI, but it's entering this space. How do you think the investigative mindset changes now?
It's going to be super good and super bad at the same time.
I love it.
I mean, I think in that book at that time, I had asked ChatGPT a question, will AI take over the jobs or forensic jobs? It said no. In effect, it said no. And if you ask it today, I'm sure it's going to say, well, maybe. And I firmly believe that there will be a point in our tools where we'll just connect it to an image and just verbally ask questions. Who did it or whatever, right? Whatever you want to ask. And it'll pump it out with the report. We're almost there anyway with some tools. I mean, Celebrite, Magnet, even Belkosoft has context searching and things. So we're almost there where it can search for everything. Once it gets into the databases, if it can access things without being, extracted, I think the technical part is going to be over for us. I mean, for the just pushing the buttons. And the only thing we're going to need is someone to validate what is found. So how many people, if you can, I mean, some cases take 40 hours, 80 hours. Sometimes you spend months on depending what you have. I think Sands, I just watched Rob Lee's, he had a little presentation. He turned I think he said 1 or 5 day work process to 18 minutes right, with AI. So you look at that.
Interesting. I guess I'll have to find that.
So, and there's more. I think Celebrite just had one today or yesterday or so, the things that they can do where you can query all these devices. What are the connections between these devices? And it's one thing to have a spreadsheet, or visual, but it's another one that AI says, here's the connections in a manner you can read it. So I think we're getting there pretty fast and we're going to be there much faster. And I think it was Celebrate. It was asking questions. What should I do next, basically, in this investigation? And the demo.
So the examiner was like, what should I do next?
Yeah. So it was just a
or
demonstration.
Was it the AI asking, what should I do next?
No.
Who was asking that
It was
question?
the demonstrator was saying, what should I do next in this case kind of thing. And the AI said, you should find the registered owner of the vehicles, right? Something like that. And I thought, that's pretty neat. And for the lazy investigator who says, what do I do next? They're just going to follow that trail what AI says without any judgment. And I've said it so often that if you don't know when AI is wrong, you don't know how to do your job, right? If you ask AI a question and you don't know the answer to be right for sure or the answer to be wrong, you have to get another job or go learn what you're doing. That's why the super bad part is when people who don't know or they're going to trust AI, what do I do next? What do I do next? And AI says, follow this trail. I've done tests with some LLMs, and I've fed it some misinformation and kind of fake cases, and I purposely led it down the wrong trail to where the AI says this is the end, right? And I'm going, that's totally wrong. But if you don't know how to do investigation, you're going to be doing some bad investigations, some bad cases, and I just can't imagine how that's going to look at the end result for the good or the great investigators. If they're asking, hey, what should I do next in this case? And AI says, go find an airplane or something. It's like, well, that's a stupid answer because that's not, you know what I mean? They're going to know what the answer is right or wrong.
Yeah,
that can help speed up an investigation, right? But you're looking at two sets of people of one who's going to be just an AI prompter and the other one is going to be, it's going to clear my backlog from 1 week to 18 minutes, for this case, so I can do more cases faster. So you'll have less need for staffing, obviously, because you're going to run through a lot more. And the investigator just validates, as long as they know that they can validate what they find, it's going to make it easier. Those who don't, if you don't know the tech and you don't know how to investigate, AI is going to really push you out fast.
Yep. Well, Brett, have you seen the Magnet Forensics commercial for their AI? One of the first things it says, I know Becky's seen it, it says like, who are the key players in this case?
Right.
That's like one of the first things it has to like draw you in. And I'm not sure why they're advertising, but I don't know. They are. So have you seen that commercial? The whole Magnet Forensics one? It's pretty sexy looking commercial, to be honest.
I think I look at AI when people ask me, do I use it? Should we use it? I think for a first pass, AI is good.
Yeah.
And at first pass, like a triage. And if you have 10 terabyte of data, 20 devices, it's like, well, this is going to take me a long time to go through, right? And then try to piece it together, with a matrix chart and all those other things. But if you can ask AI right up front within an hour, hey, I need the key players, conflicts in here, who's connected, and AI gives you something in that 1 hour that would have taken you, a week. I think that's good because then that gives you a good start of, okay, now let me focus on this, see if AI is right, and go from there. So I think that can solve a lot of time crunch. It's just that if some take that to be the end all and be all of, hey, it says John Doe's is the guy, print report.
Yeah.
Later AI will say, oh, I'm sorry, I got it wrong. I'll do better next time.
I was talking to Jessica Hyde the other day, and she was feeding some information to something that recently dropped, and it was 100% incorrect. And she was telling it was wrong, and it was responded with, "You're right, I am wrong." And so,
thank you for.
So very interesting there. Well, thank you for that.
I was going to say my last comment about like AI is I view it as when like my husband and I are trying to decide where to go and eat. He can like say stuff, but I'm here to say like, nope. So I'm sort of that gatekeeper. Is it right? Is there evidence to support what you said? I'm going to go through it and validate it.
Right.
That's right.
It's just like an informant tip.
There you go. It's a tip.
Yeah.
It is a tip. That's right. And that's what you mentioned in the earlier. Okay, so we're going to skip to this lightning round and talk about one word or short answer responses. And I'll ask the first, and then Stacey and I'll just kind of flip these questions to you. The most underrated skill in DFIR
is the investigation mindset.
Most overrated forensic tool.
I plead the fifth. Or any tool that doesn't do what you want it to do. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. I think I know the answer to this one. Coffee or tea?
Yeah. What is tea?
Well said. Paper notes or digital notes?
Yeah. Paper and pen can save your life.
Yeah.
I'm all for that. I've used it in trials. Yeah. That's it.
First thing you do when assigned a new case
is legal authority.
Biggest misconception about digital forensics?
It's
yeah, exactly. I love that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Biggest misconception about digital forensics. Wait, did you just read that?
I just read that one.
Sorry, I'm so sorry. One book every investigator should read.
Mine.
Investigative Mindset.
Or
Like this one.
all of her book is there's so many books. Whatever book you need to learn, you read that book.
Yes.
Not all of them, just the books that you need.
Mm-hmm.
One habit that every examiner should stop doing.
Ooh, guessing.
I like it. Most valuable lesson you've learned from a mistake.
Not asking myself, what if I'm wrong?
What gives you hope about the next generation of investigators?
The abundance of information that's available that we have access to, that they have access to.
Yes.
Yeah. If listeners walk away remembering one lesson from deeper investigative mindset, what do you hope it is?
The forensic tools are just a means to the end, and always consider what the end objective is.
Love it. Love it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, Brett, where can people find your books? You offer training, and how can they connect with you? Where can they find you and your stuff?
Just brettshavers.com. Everything will be, you can go branch out from there, but it's all on there.
Awesome. Yeah.
And we'll link to that in the show notes.
Yes, we will definitely link to that. So, Brett,
Okay.
thank you so much for joining us. This conversation
thank you.
always reminds us that the most powerful forensic tool isn't software or hardware. It's the examiner's ability to think critically, like you mentioned, remain objective, and then follow that evidence wherever it takes us or leads us. So digital investigations aren't just about finding artifacts. They're about asking the right questions, challenging our assumptions, and seeking the truth with humility and discipline. So thank you to our listeners. If you've enjoyed our podcast, please take a moment to leave us a rating and a review. It helps new listeners find us. Until next time, stay safe, stay sharp, and as always, keep parsing the truth one bite at a time.
If you enjoyed this episode, make sure to follow us to get notified the next time a new episode drops. If you can do more, head on over to parsingthetruth.com and donate by clicking on the donate button. Parsing the Truth is a nonprofit organization, and we are raising money to send a new digital forensic examiner to IASIS training next year in Orlando. Thanks.